turned the corner, went up a slight hill, and to his astonishment, he recognised the village immediately. The same streets were still there, and many of the same houses stood just as they'd been photographed nearly 100 years ago. The old post office with its sign containing the vital clue was still there too, though it was no longer the post office but a private house, looking exactly the same. Apart from a doorway here and a window frame there, many of the scenes in the black and white photos were almost unchanged by the passage of time in the 20th century. It was just like entering a time warp. Colin, you must have been tremendously excited to find that the village had hardly changed at all in 100 years.
Yes, first of all, I thought it was an achievement to get the photographs, but then to see the village had practically stayed the same, with only a few minor changes, was really quite amazing. But the really annoying thing was that having found the village, I still didn't know who had taken the photographs.
Of course. So how did you solve that part of the mystery?
Well, I met an old lady called Rose Cornell who identified many of the cottages, but also saw many of her relatives standing outside of the doors. And she immediately said, of course, it was Minnie Holland, the squire's daughter.
Minnie Holland's father owned most of the village in the 1880s. Here he is in this photo Minnie took of him surrounded by the hounds of the local hunt. This is Walter, her brother, out for a walk with his dog. And her elder sister Louise is standing on the left of this picture with one of her friends. Her younger sister Alice posed for Minnie with her pet dog in the grounds of Cropthorne Court, the biggest house in the village, where Minnie, her parents and her 6 brothers and sisters all lived. In Minnie's day, young girls from well-to-do families didn't go out to work, so they filled up their spare time with hobbies, and one of Minnie's was photography. She probably used a camera something like this. This is slightly more sophisticated than the Fox Talbot camera that we had in the studio. Instead of modern rolls of film, Minnie would go along to her local chemist in Evesham and get a glass plate like this, which fits in the back of the camera, like so. It goes in this slide holder. It was quite a fiddly performance just getting your camera ready in those days. And once safely inside the slide holder, this goes into the back of the camera like that. Dry plate cameras like this needed a much longer exposure time than our modern Instamatics. So if you were having a photograph taken years ago, you had to sit absolutely still for minutes on end. That probably explained why Minnie took lots of photos of cottagers, so they couldn't move. Ready? Say cheese. Minnie also photographed Cropthorne Church. It's got a long history and is mentioned in the Domesday Book. But it was especially important to Minnie because she sang in the choir and played the organ there. The Holland family were quite rich, and Minnie's father paid for a lot of work to be done here in Cropthorne Church in the 1890s. They were an artistic family, and as well as her photography, organ playing and singing, Minnie and her sister Louise carved these beautiful designs on the choir stalls. You can see what a good job they made of them and how well they've survived to the present day. Let's hope our York Minster bosses survive as long. Mrs. Rose Cornell was the elderly lady who told Colin Webb all about Minnie Holland in the first place. She's rather frail now and lives in Evesham Hospital. But she was strong enough to tell me more about Minnie and identify some of her own relatives who lived in Cropthorne when Minnie took the remarkable photos. Did you know Minnie Holland very well,
Oh,
Rose?
extremely well, yes.
And what sort of a girl do you remember her as being?
Oh, she wasn't a girl. She was one of the daughters of our Squire Holland of Cropthorne Court. And she was, well, I mean, she looked after the choir. And
I get the impression she was very talented.
Oh, very, very. They all were. They were 4 sisters.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, one of her talents was photography. So can you point out some of the people in this photograph here? This is on Tarpley's corner.
That was my dad.
Was your dad there in the middle?
My sister and my elder brother.
Right. What were their names?
Lizzie and Jim.
Yeah. And then there's the lady outside the shop. Who's that?
That was my mother.
Who would that be? Is that your grandma?
Yes, it was. I don't know who those were, and I don't know who these children were.
Right. I'll tell you what I find interesting is this boy here's got a pinafore on.
Yes, he's my younger brother, Hubert.
Yes. Was that quite common for the boys to wear smocks and pinafores?
I really couldn't tell you.
Yeah. So I've not seen it before. And there are a lot of them wearing caps as well, which you don't really see nowadays.
They all wore caps.
No, and what we got here.
Oh, yes, that's opposite the manor wall. and that's the church wall. That was the old squire's granary, and there was a hole in that door for the cat to get in and out to catch any vermin that might be there.
I expect it's quite a lot, wasn't there, really? A lot of rats
Or
and
bound
mice.
to be, yes.
Yes. Sadly, there are no surviving members of the Holland family today, and Minnie didn't take any photos of herself for us to remember her by either. But she did leave us a unique record of life in an English village at the end of the last century. And after Colin Webb's smart detective work, the Holland family and this whole village and its people will never be forgotten now, thanks to Minnie Holland and her Cropthorne camera.
And this is the only known photograph of Minnie Holland. Now, nobody knows who took it, but as she's obviously quite an old lady in it, it was taken long after she took those wonderful pictures of the village of Cropthorne.